Welcome to Austin Stories. Today, a manager gets busted for stealing from a store, and the fallout for everyone is intense. And then, OP does the job just as he's told, and the micromanager begins to freak out. Also, all my videos are in podcast form. Search for the Austin Stories podcast on your local provider, or check out the link in the description of the video. Get ready. We can't take any action right now. Posted by Gabba Gabba Ray. This, is a doozy. Thought about it a lot to make sure I remember all the good details. I worked at this mall shoe store in almost every mall about 12 years ago. I was about 20 at the time. It's kind of an alternative scene store, like Zoomies, but very small. It starts with a J and rhymes with Bernie's. Friend got me an assistant manager job to replace him when he quit to be a plumber. The manager was kind of a friend too, Adam. This was real low level, low paid retail. Just to get a sense of scope, we, two managers, worked about 60 hours a week. We made commission, but this store location, my hometown, had so little traffic that our checks had to be manually adjusted every week up to minimum wage. Each store had 3 to 4 part-timers too, usually high school kids. So it was good news. After a year or so, we both got a promotion to move to a different store at a different mall, much nicer and 30 minutes away. Much more sales means my weekly pay went up to a couple dollars more an hour. So, problems started after about 6 months at our new store. Our district manager, Andy, hired a dude in his 30s as manager and some other 20-something girl. One of my friends, Mike, worked there part-time as well. He was also an apprentice toolmaker in high school, so he didn't need the money. He just came in 1 day a week to receive and stock shoes and to grab some pizza. Apparently, the dude was hardcore messing with the other manager and the part-timers. So, the assistant ended up quitting and they fired the dude. I think one of the part-timers recorded him doing something on their phone if I remember correctly. That's some foreshadowing. Andy is bad at external hires. So he hired a new manager, Jeff, but asked if I could go back to the crappy store for a while to help the new guy settle in. I said, well, sure. He also had a third manager he hired who wanted Adam to train for a few months so she could go to another store as well. Sounds good, I'm a team player. Well, it turns out this new guy Jeff, who Adam actually somewhat knew in the tattooed hardcore guy scene, was kind of a screw-up himself. I felt bad at first. He was kind of scatterbrained, customers didn't like him, he was always dirty and kind of smelled bad. With the first 2 weeks, he came in smiling, carrying a microwave for the back room. Look, we can have hot lunches now. Plopped it on our glass case where we checked customers out, and a crap load of live roaches fell out all over the place. There were roaches in the store from there on out. I would see them every morning when I flipped the lights on. Great. Now, I didn't want to bring my own food here. Then, bad crap starts happening. He would start coming in a couple of hours late when I opened the store. Not a huge deal, just annoying as heck. I generally wouldn't get to eat breakfast, so lunch would get pushed back a couple hours so I could leave the store. Yes, you couldn't shut the gate and go to the food court. The mall would call our DM Andy and tell him that we closed outside of hours. Do it occasionally, or even open late after 10 a.m. and they can fine our store, which means we'd get written up for sure. He would even call out sometimes, which means that I would work 2 or 3 doubles in a week. This is supposed to happen only once. Managers get 1 day off during the week, so the other person has to work 9 to 9:30. Part-timers didn't come in until 5 usually, so you're SOL. It's very irritating to have it sprung on you several times. Remember, we were also salary, so no overtime. I would also be on the receiving end of unhappy emails from corporate. When Jeff would open, he would come in late and occasionally forget to deposit the cash sales for the day in the sealed envelope to the bank that's in the same mall as us. They would turn up at the bank a few days late, apparently in cut open bags. This is where I made the first call to Andy. I told him the whole thing. Basically, told to sit tight, he'll keep an eye on things. Alright. Well, things got worse. He would sometimes bail out in the middle of the day for a few hours on end. My buddy Mike told me that they found his stash in the back room, and products started to go missing. Every Tuesday morning, we'd have to come in 30 minutes earlier and do a little mini audit. Basically a dozen or so different shoes of specific SKU numbers and enter in the POS our on-hand quantity. I noticed some of the more expensive shoes that we sold to dummies are missing when I know they weren't sold. Diesels and Pumas, Timberlands and Nikes. Turns out, when my buddy Mike would do the inventory on the weeknight that things got delivered, Jeff would just check off the totals received for him. Of course, a handful of things were missing each week. Almost never were things actually missing from the boxes when I did it. FCS were pretty good about sending inventory. I knew this was going to be bad news. I knew the mini audits were used to pick up on internal theft. We also had a yearly audit that was coming in 6 or so months. Basically, you count every item in the store to account for missing and stolen crap. 1.5% product loss is considered very bad and could result in us getting written up. Remember that point for later. I called Andy a second time and got the same response. Okay, been telling Adam the whole time as well. I know he'll stick up for me if anything goes down, but said just to keep tracking everything. So, in true addict fashion, kept calling out, kept taking things, kept losing cash deposits. What really set me off was I found out that he was blaming some of the crap on me to our fellow mall people. Mutual friends at other stores saying cash deposits sometimes go missing when I work. Bro, no they don't. This is a dog crap job, but I'm not getting fired for $300. He was also selling Adderall to people out of the store and bribing my friend with it to come in early during the week so he can leave the mall for a couple of hours. This really ticked me off because at 20 years old, I had this dumb idea that I wanted to possibly join the military and go into law enforcement. Never been fired or arrested or any of this crap before and still haven't, so I wanted no part of being around this dude. A weekend came up too where he made really lewd comments about some girls walking around in shorts that have had to have been under 16. Okay, forget this dude. Called Andy again, and this time I was serious. Told him about the whole issue in the store too. Basically said this guy is making me look bad too. Come and test him, do something. I'll call the cops for you if you want. I don't know why he wasn't doing anything. Andy came in once and wrote me up for playing my iPod over the speakers, for breaking company policy. Why are you letting this happen? In a nutshell, he said he can't do anything for now until Adam is done training his new assistant so she could go run her new store. I'd be able to go work with Adam again in the good mall. Okay. Malicious compliance time. I called Adam the next day and told him what Andy said. Asked if she's good enough to cut loose so I can get the heck out of here. He said no problem at all. The next week I was out making a couple dollars more and in a better mall with a Taco Bell even. My run with Jeff was only about 3 months. Things went super downhill from there. They got a new assistant in Jeff's store to train under him. Yikes. But all the part-timers were still there. They kept texting me all the cool stories. Well, apparently, he ramped up stealing cash and stealing shoes. Eventually, those mini audits caught up to him. One night, he left the store an hour before closing, leaving a part-timer alone, which is against policy. Closing time came and went, and she thought it was funny, but had no idea what to do. She didn't have keys or know how to close the store at all. Security got involved, called Andy, and eventually Jeff got back to the store an hour plus late. Andy was told by HQ to write him up the next day, but also bring another area lead in our district to audit the store ahead of schedule and inquire about all the missing cash deposits. Andy didn't realize the scope of the stolen cash. Apparently, several thousands never made it back to the bank at that point. Andy, Jeff, and another manager or something audited the store while it was open. I think word was a product variance of around 10% missing product, not including all the cash. Big freaking yikes. Don't know exactly what happened, but the police were involved. They fired everybody, cleaned house, even the new assistant and every part-timer. I think they had to. My buddy Mike, he thought it was hilarious. Well, can't say I didn't warn you 3 times. I saw him on Facebook recently, allegedly clean now. I don't care though, forget that guy. So here's the thing about this situation. This guy gets in this position, the power that he has over the part-timers and the like. He starts doing some sketchy things, stealing and trying to make a little money from the store he's not supposed to make. He gets away with it for a little while, so it escalates. He keeps going and going, pushing those limits. Now, typically when people shoplift from a store, if they're a customer, they will let you build up a bank until it's actually a felony. If you still just, a little bit here, a little bit there, they'll let it go and build up. And in this case, it's a little different, but they got him completely trying to rip and tear this store apart, and they got the justice and totally cleaned the house, destroyed the store, and this is just nuclear because it's leveling the ground, completely destroying and ruining the store. And that guy too. Holy cow, OP, this is a wild ride. I do not need you staying here with me, answering phone calls or processing customers for the rest of the shift. Posted by J-Man Waterloo. Context: I used to work at a major supermarket in the online grocery department. This happened when I was about 7 months in this position, and about this time, the Delta variant of COVID had arrived, which meant that everyone in the community was scared of getting COVID and didn't want to actually walk into the grocery store to shop. Thus, all of these folks placed online orders for either pickup or delivery. Due to this exceptional demand, our bosses decided to have 20 order slots available to customers per hour for pickup. I worked in the pickup team, and the delivery team was outsourced to a third-party company. Anyways, we have a couple of new colleagues join us, and one of them in particular is of a very young age, 3 years younger, who also happens to be a micromanager and essentially a pain in the butt to work with. We'll call him Andy. Andy loves to go on his phone all the time. Now, mind you, I'm only in post-secondary now, and this happened in early 2021. In our team, we have a couple of roles which are assigned to staff on a daily basis. Sometimes the roles change, but generally they stay the same. Per our specific store policy, there are supposed to be 2 persons in the home area of the team at all times, answering customer calls and gathering all the necessary bins for a person's order. Note that role is given to generally more tenured persons unless they request otherwise and requires additional training from the department manager. One person is responsible for taking out the groceries to the customer's vehicle, and the rest of the staff are usually assigned to collect the individual items off the store shelves per a customer's order. Story. One day, I come into work, and I'm working a full shift, which is 8 hours. It happens that I'm working with newer staff only, and Andy is also working. There is no role assignment sheet out on that day, so no specific roles were assigned. I decide, since I'm more tenured and have had the necessary training, that I would stay in the home area of the team. Andy comes up to me and says that the manager had assigned him to stay for his shift, and he requested for me to help collect items off the shelves for the rest of my shift. Now, note here, it's difficult to be using your phone while collecting customer items, so ideally you want to stay in home base to use your phone. I say, you haven't had the training from the manager yet, and I'm more tenured. Andy says, no, I have had the training. Please go and collect items. I do not need you staying here with me answering phone calls or processing customers for the rest of the shift. Are you sure? All of the order slots are full for the rest of the shift. Yes, it's fine. Now please go and collect items. Okay. Malicious compliance. So I go and start collecting items for future customers' orders, and I return to base after a run, which is hour 1, to drop off the containers with items and grab new containers. Now you can only take so many containers in a cart at once. Andy seems to be managing fine, so I don't disturb him and I go out for a second run. I come back, hour 2, and Andy asks me to take over his customer phone call. At this point, the customer is arguing over something trivial. But I tell him, hey, you told me that you don't need me to stay here for the entire shift, so I'm going for another run. Andy hesitantly agrees, and I continue with my third run. I come back, hour 3, and there is a queue of about 7 post-it notes, which the anticipated customer wait time is 35 minutes. Yikes! With customer orders on it, and Andy is on the phone with the customer. Post-it notes were used when we didn't have time to print off proper order summaries, and additionally, the policy for waiting times is a maximum of 5 minutes from the time they call. He sees me and asked me to help him process orders, as well as obtaining the required container so the staff responsible for taking orders out could do so in a timely manner. Once again, I tell him, hey, you told me not to stay here and do any of the home-based tasks. I'm going for another run. I come back, hour 4, and there was a long line of 23 post-it notes with customer orders on it. Anticipated customer wait time of 2 hours. Big yikes. And this time, he pulls on my arm as soon as I come in and asks me to help him answer phone calls and process orders. But once again, I refused, referencing what he told me. He let out a massive sigh and called the manager's extension. At this point, I went out to do another run. Halfway, hour 4.5 through my run, I'm interrupted by the manager on duty. Our team's manager had gone home for the evening. He asked me to come with him to help him and Andy in our area to clean up the backlog, as at this point, customers were waiting well over 3.5 hours, which is a major problem. I walk back into the home base, and the manager questions me of why I wasn't staying in the home base, taking care of phone calls and customer orders. I tell him the full truth, specifically that Andy had strictly noted that our team manager assigned him and him only to be in the home base managing these tasks, and Andy had sent me out to collect customer items for the rest of the shift in its entirety. Andy rebutted with the fact that he did not say this and that he asked me to help him multiple times and I had blatantly refused. I told both the manager and Andy that I'll be helping to clear the backlog and then going back to do runs. And at this point, I empathize with our customers waiting for 3.5 hours. At the end of my shift, we finally managed to catch up a decent amount, and I did end up staying about 30 minutes overtime to reschedule the customers scheduled for later in the day to the next day's morning slots, double booking the next day's slots while Andy went home already. As a courtesy, I gave each customer that had to be rescheduled a $20 voucher. There were 44 total rescheduled customers. Just as I clocked out, I bump into the manager and he tells and rants to me what a crap show today was. I tell him, you may want to look at the CCTV of our home base. Have a good rest of your night. The fallout. It so happened that I was taking 2 weeks of leave that day. And after the leave, when I went back, I noticed every shift that Andy was doing runs and never staying in home base. Turns out, the manager on duty looked at the CCTV that very same night and heard very clearly what Andy had told me. Conferring with our team manager, they canceled his administrator permissions on the order processing computer, which he had begged our team manager for over 2 weeks, as well as giving him a written warning. However, that didn't seem enough, since while I was away, Andy decided to do this same thing to another staff member and ended up getting a second and essentially final written warning. Plus, he made it on the frequent monitoring list of every manager. Now at 3 written warnings, your employment is immediately terminated. The days and the shifts that followed after were very pleasant, as there was not a single peep from Andy when he came into work. He directly started collecting customer items without asking. Update: Andy still works there, he still has his admin privileges revoked, and is solely collecting customer items, printed with the assignment sheet, i.e. not anticipated to change. Generally, role assignments are written in on the day of. 2. Former manager was laid off as of January 2022 for mistreating the department, including scheduling staff outside of their availability slots, as well as multiple incidents of not following policy. 3. Our team's voucher budget increased 50% for this calendar year because of worse incidents that happened after I left the company. Oh wow, OP, this is perfect malicious compliance because this guy told you, hey, you need to do this thing that I say. You're like, no, that's not such a great idea. I got the experience and the know-how. This should not happen. He says, oh, I got it under control. And then he begins to fall out little by little and gets worse and worse, realizing his mistakes and trying to suck you back in as if nothing ever happened. Kinda toxic behavior, but you stood your ground and apparently got out at a good time because things just went to crap even more. Way to go, OP. Brown noser boss gaslights me, so I quit and do this to them. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss this crazy fallout, and I'll see you there.